Good morning to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Wednesday, September the 12th, 2018. Tropics are as busy as we have seen them in quite a long time. It certainly resembles what we had last year, but the players are in different positions and different areas will be impacted in very different ways than what we had last year with Irma and Jose and then Maria and Harvey before all of that. This year, the emphasis with the big system that we're tracking, of course, with Florence, is going to be in this region over the next few days. And then, of course, we'll be watching what happens with Isaac as it moves through the Lesser Antilles. In fact, let's just start with Isaac. This is the latest information. Tropical storm warning for the central portions of the Lesser Antilles. Tropical storm watch farther to the north. And the track is basically due west. Not forecast to become a hurricane again. Upper level winds just not favorable in this part of the Atlantic Basin right now. And it is highly unusual to see what was a hurricane over here basically weaken into eventually and presumably and hopefully a remnant low in this area. But you have to watch and see what happens beyond the next few days. We know how things can change. But heavy rain, gusty winds, locally rough surf conditions, big waves, etc. for the areas that this moves through. Nothing like what you saw last year, obviously, but a hazard nonetheless, so please focus on staying safe down in that region. All right, so back to the home page here. This system here, 95L, forecast to perhaps intensify, get its act together, whatever. And yes, we will talk about this in a second. As it moves towards the Texas coast. Main takeaway here is big rainmaker for parts of Texas, maybe some locally higher wind gusts, etc., with any squalls. But this does not look like it will develop into anything that would bring a big surge problem, nor any major wind problems, but a heavy rainmaker nonetheless. So you folks in Texas, obviously you have sort of written the book on how to deal with heavy rain. So please follow that playbook and be careful out there as well, and especially in the regions where Harvey impacted. More sort of rubbing salt in the wounds for people still recovering from Harvey. Now, this yellow circle near Bermuda just adds intrigue to everything. It says an area of low pressure is expected to develop near Bermuda. Late this weekend, some gradual development is possible while it drifts westward. And no, I'm not kidding. So we'll see what happens with that. Bermuda, maybe some inclement weather from that system. So let's take a look at the satellite imagery here of Hurricane Florence. It looked like it was really getting ready to take off there. Now it's a little bit more ragged and just a little bit. I am not sure why this has not strengthened as they have been talking about. It could all along. Some of the forecasts suggesting near Category 5. And we're not seeing that, and there's no complaints there, that is for sure. Nevertheless, it is a very powerful hurricane with a large wind field, and it's bringing huge seas with it in excess of 80 feet. I think it was in the northeast quadrant, and it still has an opportunity to intensify further as it moves along this path of very warm water. The Gulf Stream lies in here. And you just never know. You never, ever take these for granted. And you just have to assume the worst, and you can hope for the best. That's fine, but hope by itself, not ever a good planning tool. You can't hope these things away as much as we would like to. And so the latest statistics here, let's take a look at the track map. And yes, it is just bizarre, the story with Florence continuing to be very strange. And essentially, I was trying to explain it to my daughter this morning that pretend, if you will, and this is a very simple way to look at it. It's not meteorologically spot-on accurate where I'm going to draw these different players, but at least it helps you understand. So pretend for a moment that the ridge of high pressure sitting out here is like a big balloon, and it has and is expanding, or at least holding its own. And so Florence is also a balloon, and it just can't go into the ridge, this balloon. So it just follows along the edge as long as this stays put. Well, it doesn't stay put. This balloon out here, so to speak, is going to be replaced and change its shape by a larger balloon up here that will eventually expand south and eventually shove Florence this way. And as they change, that changes the shape of the track. The inflation and deflation, if you will, of these large ridges of high pressure, and they're big bubbles of air, so to speak, in the atmosphere, or a dome of air, and that is why we're seeing this strange track. Normally, what we would see and what we're used to seeing is you have this big area of air sitting out here, the ridge, and then you have this big jackhammer that comes down called a trough that moves from west to east and bullies and pushes this ridge or erodes it, and then the hurricane can come in and turn up and around that. That's what we're used to seeing. Or they come in from the south like Irma last year, and then they end up, because of a trough coming in and then out, bending back to the west later. It's just very unusual that in this case, we're not really seeing and not at all, a deep layer trough digging in to kick Florence out this way. It's just not there. So we're going to see this very strange motion. So that being said, let's zoom in on this. You folks along eastern North Carolina, down into the not upstate, but the upper coast, the northeast coast of South Carolina, through the low country, are going to likely see prolonged hurricane conditions. And that's just almost unspeakable in terms of the longevity. 24 to 30 hours of just pounding conditions, storm surge, very heavy rainfall, hurricane force winds. There'll be lulls from time to time, but once this core here, and we'll zoom in on it, when this region here, this sort of donut area right here, once that gets to the coast, that's what's going to bring the pain, so to speak. That's where it's really going to start affecting your life in a very negative way. Out ahead of that, of course, will be the rain bands that come ahead of time, okay, and that'll start dumping rainfall and increasing the wind and the waves and the surge, etc. But it's that core area around the central dense overcast, that donut, that really brings the worst of the conditions. And let's go look at a couple of other things here that we really need to talk about. The rainfall potential, absurd. Yes, that is 20 inches of rain. It'll be more than that when all is said and done over a good deal of southeast North Carolina. 10 to 15 inches in a larger area extending into the sandhills. And then, of course, 6 to 10 in an even broader area than that. The flooding from fresh water, the river flooding and the flash flooding will be record-breaking. It's almost a certainty. Nothing's ever a certainty, of course, but this looks absolutely devastating. So please be careful. Don't drive around in that stuff. If you're worried and you're like, I got to leave, and you start driving and you see just don't do that. But my goodness, if you do and there's a flooded road, don't drive across it. Just go back to where you were and, do whatever you have to do to stay safe. Go to somebody else's house, a local church, a hotel, anything to keep yourself from driving through floodwaters as this progresses, because this is a very serious problem in the making. And I think over the next day or so, we're going to see this expand in this region, and we're going to have massive flooding, storm surge problems all the way down Murrells Inlet, Georgetown, Charleston, Beaufort, maybe even Savannah, Tybee Island. This is just, I won't say unprecedented, because that's not necessarily true, but it's certainly something we haven't seen in our, the last 25 years, not to this magnitude. Looking at the public advisory here, I want to discuss the hazards affecting land again, just to drill this home to you. 9 to 13 feet of storm surge above, that's inundation above ground level, and that's expected from Cape Fear, North Carolina to Cape Lookout, North Carolina. And in terms of where that is, Cape Fear is right here, Cape Lookout is here, so 9 to 13 feet of surge somewhere in that region. And then in the Pamlico, Albemarle Sounds up here, very high storm surge relative to, anything we've seen lately for sure. Let's see if the Cape Lookout to Ocracoke, 6 to 9 feet. So yes, the Albemarle Sound, the any bays and rivers, the Neuse, the Trent River, the Bay River, towns like Oriental, where I'm going to go put a camera in just a little while. Those are small towns that you're not going to have national news outlets reporting from there, but I'm going to make sure I cover them as best I can. This area right here, please read it in the public advisory. Dangerous, life-threatening surge. The rainfall outlined right here, 20 to 30 inches, isolated 40-inch amounts. 40 inches, you think about 48 inches, of course, is 4 feet, so this is going to be in excess of 3 feet. And probably we will see higher amounts eventually. And it spreads into the Appalachians, a very dangerous situation unfolding in terms of the rainfall. So you need to take this very seriously. From here on out, really, it's a matter of just watching this on satellite, eventually on radar, and you getting yourself ready. If you're not, if you're going to hunker down, stay down, and then if you're leaving, do it today. Because once conditions start to deteriorate, you're going to be in a heap of trouble. Okay, so be careful doing all of that. Your preparations, be patient, take your time. It's going to start getting more and more frantic for people who have been waiting, and now they realize it's go time. I want to talk about real quick my coverage. This is important because it involves two things: public awareness, helping you have the information you need, but also this is what I do for a job. I have a degree in geography. Right here in Wilmington is where I went to school, University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and I've done this work for 22 years. I walked out with my degree and literally went to work the following Monday at a consulting firm for economic development, and they knew nothing about hurricanes and asked me to produce a report about hurricane impacts on the Cape Fear region in order to lure businesses down here to build industry. And my report showed that we do have a hurricane problem. I knew that, and my boss was not happy about that. How do you go to companies and say, yeah, come on, please build and whatever in Wilmington, and by the way, we do have a hurricane problem? But it showed me how little people really knew about our history, and thus my company was born. And it took a few years to really get it up and running, but it really coincided with Bertha, Fran, Bonnie, Dennis, and Floyd all hitting the Cape Fear region at the same time, and I looked like a genius. I just was telling the obvious. So ever since then, this has been my business, HurricaneTrack.com, and the work that I've done doing maps and consulting projects with companies such as Lowe's and Sprint and Bank of America, you name it, that's all in the first part of my career. Now in the age of internet and social media and apps and crowdfunding, the way that I earn my living is through you guys. Mostly. I do work with the Weather Channel as a contractor. They license my video. That helps some, but I'm not on a salary with them. All right? It's seasonal, obviously. And so I rely on you. That being said, we do have our app. It is in the App Store, and I'm going to try to get it back on Google Play. We don't have the live video working as it should in the Android version, but I do have a way to at least bring in pictures captured from the cameras so that you have something as opposed to nothing. And at least there will be that. So look for this, Hurricane Impact. Right now in the App Store, I'm debating as to whether or not to put it back on Google Play. I just don't like selling a defective product. It works perfect on iPhones, and you can put it on an iPad. It's not designed for iPad, but if you have an iPad and you search for iPhone apps on the iPad, you'll find it. So it's called Hurricane Impact, and it's on the App Store now. If you have the Android version, I'm going to try to, I'll put in the images. We're working with somebody to help us out, put it that way. So you're going to have something as opposed to nothing. I'm making a big effort here, and some nice people are helping. This is what it looks like. This is the screenshot. I never got these uploaded to the App Store when the latest version came out, so I'm going to show them to you here. And I'm literally able to update this on the go. Anywhere that I am, I can post stuff to it. And then the live cams, that's where the live cams will be. There's a tab, as you can see down here at the bottom. And your news is here, live weather data, the videos that I produce, and then the live cams. And then, of course, we have the tracking, which I'll show you in a second. But the live cams, we're going to have at least 6. And in the live cams area, as I said, for Android users, I'm going to embed this picture right here, so to speak. Like this is a live shot. This is just an example. Then I'm going to put the picture that we capture underneath, and that'll show up. For whatever reason, the video just only plays for 12 seconds. It sees it as a clip, the Android app, and not as live video. That's the problem. We have tracking, very easy to use, tracking all the different pages and images that I look at. I've just put them in the app, and you can pinch zoom, and there they are. It's really nice. I'll be putting the radar in there, etc., as this gets closer, and we can update this on the go. And then, of course, my pride and joy, because I developed this entirely myself. I got somebody else to code it, but this was my idea, to put weather data and maybe even the live feed on the same page. It just depends on whether or not I put a camera where I have a weather instrument. But you'll be able to watch live weather data as it comes in. This is an example from Irma last year down in Marathon. But that's what the app does. And there's no other app like this. What other app, and there's some good ones, some of them aren't so good, but what other app tells you what's happening, helps you prepare, and then takes you out there and immerses you in it? None. Zero. Not like this. Not like this, with custom designed equipment and weather instrumentation, and then in the field videos, you name it. It should be #1 on the App Store. I know I'm biased, but I'm very, very proud of this. So it's on the App Store. There it is. It's called Hurricane Impact, 2 words, and you can grab that off the App Store. We also can be supported on Patreon, and the $25 level on Patreon gives you full access to our HurricaneTrack.com membership, the insider site as I call it, where we have our own chat. All of the camera systems are on a web page. So if you want the fullest web experience, then you can sign up through Patreon or just through our normal PayPal subscription service. And this is how you can support what I do. If you appreciate this and are in the position, I know some of you aren't, and that's understandable. That's why 90% of what I do, if not more, is available at absolutely no cost. So I have to talk about this because I am not a self-made millionaire sitting on a ton of money doing this as a hobby. This is what I do for a living. I try to help people with the best information that I can. I've got a great team of people behind me, and it's growing, and it's going to grow further, and I think it's going to be because of this right here at Patreon, the long-term patronage and support to sustain something that matters to you. All right? Make it happen. And I can grow, and we can have 12 cameras, and eventually I want all of this to be available to everybody at no cost except if you want to. Does that make sense? We're going to get there. We'll talk about that later. We'll be supported by a handful, hopefully a few hundred, and it'll be available to all. That is my goal, like public radio. For now, though, I have to do it this way, and I hope you understand. I will tweet pictures. I will put video up. And we'll do the best we can to cover it. All right, so my plan for today, I need to go to Oriental and put a camera up there. I think that's an important spot. We have the one in Rodanthe, one in New Bern. I'll be putting one at Carolina Beach, one at Murrells Inlet, and one at Charleston. And I think that'll about cover it. And then we have to figure out what to do in the inland flood part of this. Folks, I'm going to be with you for the next several days. 1 or 2 video discussions per day. And they may not be polished like this. I might have to just hold the iPhone up and talk to you and post it, okay? But we're going to cover this the best way we can. I got some great people helping me. I'm going to show you who they are eventually, and we're going to do this, all right? So just trying to think, any other thoughts? Be patient. Understand a lot of people are stressed. Don't get too stressed yourself. Hang in there. I'm in this with you because this is hitting my neck of the woods. And lastly, and most importantly, I appreciate you being on the other side, because without you, there would be no reason for me to be here. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Again, thank you so much for your time, your attention, and your support. No matter how that is, I much appreciate it more than you'll ever know. I'll have another video update for you sometime this evening.